Recording if you're ready. Hey, everybody. This is Evan. This is the Gen X Rewind podcast. Like I said, I'm Evan,
And I'm Brady.
and we're coming into your homes or cars or cell phones uh, every week. And it's been just over a week since our podcast because it was Super Bowl weekend,
Right.
and we gave our Super Bowl predictions, and we'll get to that in the first segment of our show when we talk about current events. But for informational purposes, Gen Xers, like ourselves, are people who were born from 1965 until 1980. And we think that we're probably one of the best generations of the last 100 or so years, along with the great generation who fought in World War II. Um, we fought in Grenada.
That's right.
Our, gen- our generation spent a weekend in Grenada. No, actually, on that note, I rewatched one of my favorite movies, and we're going to do this on a future podcast. Talk about some all-time favorite movies. I put together a list of about 30 of my favorites, and then I started working on TV shows.
Yeah.
So we'll do that on a future one. But was watching American Sniper and had seen it in the theater. It was incredibly moving. It's the story of American SEAL sniper uh, Chris. Why can't I remember his name all of a
Is
sudden?
it Tom Berenger? Is that who it
No,
is?
no, this is the one with the guy from The Hangover. This
Uh,
is the Chris Kyle is the name of the real player, and why I can't think of the name. This is what happens when you get old, right? It's like you can't even remember actors' names. Bradley Cooper,
Bradley Cooper.
uh, yes, and some other famous people in the movie. But I was rewatching it. I'd probably seen it. I saw it in the theater, saw it again at home, and then I watched it with my son when he was like 8 or 9, I think.
Hmm.
Now, I fast forwarded over some of the more graphic scenes, but what I wanted him to understand was that what a tremendous sacrifice it is for our people who fight in wars and do these types of things, and what a kind of a horrific experience it is for many of them.
Mhm.
And but they do it, and it's pretty incredible. And I have a feeling that they're happy that they have a new commander in chief, just as an aside,
Yeah.
one that's not in a old people's home. Uh, but anyway, watching the movie, and it's if you haven't seen it, I won't give away everything in it, but it's it's an inspiring movie, but also incredibly sad. And but in thinking about it, Chris Kyle is a Gen Xer, was a Gen Xer. His wife has a really amazing presence on social media as well. She's a wonderful person. Their two kids are now, I think, 18 and 19 or 19 and 20.
Hmm.
They were just little kids back when he was over in Iraq.
Hmm.
And but he's a Gen Xer, and he saw events on TV. I think the bombing of the U.S. Cole and 9/11, and it inspired him to go uh, into the Navy SEALs
Hmm.
and
That's
become a
right.
sniper. And just where I connected with him, his bravery is outstanding. And but I think it's something that you connect with, that you're inspired by events to defend and support your country out of that sense of patriotism. And that was something that I think Gen Xers felt a lot.
Right.
Um, I
Yeah.
recently watched Black Hawk Down too, and I had the privilege of working with some folks that had been in Iraq, and them talking about how they took care of business and stuff over there, and but just that mentality of we're going to go and get things done and make things right.
Yeah. And how difficult is that too when you're a parent, leaving your kids behind
Oh my
and
gosh.
you got more at stake at that stage of life, and still having the patriotism and heart to go over and make a difference. It's pretty,
Just incredible. It's incredible. And you think about these social media influencers dancing around on their TikTok thing. Meanwhile, there were guys over there, kicking down doors to kill bad guys, right?
yeah,
And it was interesting. There was a documentary on Netflix that I also recently watched. I think I told you to watch it sometime too. It's a documentary about Black Hawk Down, right? There's the movie, and then this was a documentary, and it's a really well made documentary. But here's my problem with it: it kind of drew a moral equivalency between the U.S. soldiers and Somali warlords,
mm,
right? Like, well, they both have a point, and the Somalis were brave defending their land, and no, you can't, you don't get to do that, right? You don't get to do that. There's not a moral equivalency between Somali drug lords and American military trying to ensure that the people over there aren't starved to death
right,
by the Somali drug lords, right? Or warlords. And they're still fighting to this day, civil war in Somalia. It's still an awful situation.
mm,
There is no moral equivalency. So by interviewing some of the people involved in shooting down the helicopter, killing American military people, drawing it like it's like, well, there's two sides to the story. Sure, there's two sides of the story. There's guys who were starving 300,000 of their own people, and then there was guys from another country who had nothing invested in this other than to protect the citizens that the drug lords and the warlords failed to protect their country from starving to death. It's not a moral equivalency.
right,
Sorry, it's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
That kind of disturbed me. And I have a feeling that the folks who were involved in it probably didn't appreciate that angle, right?
yeah, yeah,
But speaking of patriotism, I don't know if you got a chance to see that the NHL did something really interesting this year for their All-Star break, and every other league needs to take notice because the NBA is failing. It's a terrible product. Nobody watches it. The All-Star game of the NBA is a complete joke and has been for a long time. It's
yeah,
not entertaining. And the baseball All-Star game is okay. The NFL did away with theirs. They have flag football and guys jumping into pits of foam,
yeah,
right? Like because nobody would actually play. So they did this four country tournament, Sweden, Finland, US, and Canada.
yeah,
And the US played Canada in the second of the round robin. And it was in Canada, and the Canadians booed the national anthem. And as soon as the puck dropped, there was three fights.
yeah, right,
The US uh, said we're not having any of that. And of
yeah,
course, you and I have a connection to two of the guys who play on that team, the Kachuk brothers,
right,
because their dad, Keith Kachuk, played for the Coyotes, and we
yeah,
saw him play
yeah,
many years ago here in the desert. And I believe Kachuk lived in Scottsdale or still does. A lot of hockey players move here
yeah,
because they're great golfers. So they love the year-round golf weather.
yeah,
Um, but they just beat the crap out of Canada with their fists and then on the ice and beat them 3-1. And that was pretty amazing.
yeah.
And the patriotism that came out in those guys was like, you're not going to disrespect our national anthem.
Right. It was refreshing to see that. I did get a chance. I watched each of the games, and it's funny when Finland they're singing the national anthem. How bizarre are their anthems, by the way? I mean,
Yeah, they're really strange.
it's like
I always say that during the Olympics. I'm like, wow, some of these, Japan's sounds like a funeral dirge, right? It's extremely depressing. And then Brazil, I have several friends from Brazil that are Brazilian, and I have said, "What is with your national anthem?"
Yeah.
There's just a lot of shouting,
Yeah.
right? It's just like, and at the end of it, there's like a million words that are just shouted, and I have no idea what they are, but they're standing there shouting, right?
Yeah, I think they need to. Some of these countries should retool
Yeah,
their
maybe
anthems and
we've
start
we've
from scratch. But
yeah,
yeah,
we've talked about redoing ours, right? Like, because it's long and nobody can sing it, and it's got a lot of words and stuff. It's like, but don't disrespect our flag and our
no,
national anthem, or you're gonna pay for it,
yeah,
right?
and the Finland they sing, and the Americans cheered in Boston when they sang. But I have a feeling, I just have a feeling that we face the Canadians again here on
Yeah,
Thursday, and I have a feeling that the Boo Birds are going to come out and let them have it in Boston.
might be interesting. Yeah, Boston is not known for their delicate fans, let's just say.
No,
So
it could be worse. It could be in
it
Philadelphia
could
or
be in Philly. Yeah,
yeah,
I was gonna say it's like everybody knows Philly fans.
uh,
So,
yeah,
which is a good segue then to our Super Bowl predictions.
yeah.
If you recall, I guaranteed that Kansas City would win. So I think actually Commissioner Goodell had watched our podcast and wanted to prove me wrong. And so he told the referees to stand down after the first quarter of after that game.
Yeah,
And so I had predicted 31-27 Kansas City. I was very wrong on both sides. You at least called the right team.
yeah, yeah. I was
You
surprised
had
they ran
you had
away.
Philly by 6.5, right?
Yeah,
And they won by like 100.
yeah,
It felt like it, right? It was 40-6 with like 2 minutes left to go in the game. And
yeah,
then Mahomes decided, wait, this isn't going to look good for my legacy. So I'm just going to throw bombs the last 2 minutes of the game to pad my stats
yeah,
because he was awful. I mean,
yeah,
that was a terrible performance. And not just by him, the entire team looked like they thought they could just walk onto the field and do their shtick, and the
yeah,
referees would bail them out. And I saw a play where not Kittle, Kelsey just stood there. Mahomes was scrambling around, and Kelsey just stood there for like 10 seconds, didn't do anything. And then Mahomes ended up fumbling, and Kelsey didn't even move. He
huh?
just stood there like he
Yeah,
was on drugs or something. I mean, it was bizarre. There was no effort, no game plan. The Somebody said the only game plan they had was to stop Saquon Barkley, and they thought if we do that, well, you know, the Magic Man Mahomes will just run around and throw darts and
yeah,
make up for it. And Philly was like, uh-uh. And what a just absolute beatdown.
yeah,
Congratulations to Philly. I'm not, a huge Philly fan, but I certainly was pulling for them.
yeah. Me too.
And
Too.
that was there hasn't been a beatdown like that in a while. That
Yeah.
was a beatdown, right?
And sometimes you see teams where they have one really good player and they don't really surround him with tremendous talent. I mean, we saw that growing up in Detroit with Barry Sanders and
Yeah,
nobody else,
yeah. And
you know.
nobody else, right? It was a
Yeah.
one-man team.
And I think that Kansas City got pretty comfortable just expecting to be in the Super Bowl every year with Mahomes, and they just kept losing. It seemed like their receivers each year aren't as good, and they lose talent here and there, and they just don't really replace it. And I think now they're finally seeing that yeah, we're going to have to go out and get more receivers and get some pass rushers and other valuable assets because you can't just go out with one guy and win.
They got exposed, right? That the whole season was kind of a mirage. They won 11 or 12 one-score games, right? They were a few plays away from being 8-9. I mean, no kidding. They could have been 8-9, right? And that's about the quality of the team that showed up for the Super Bowl was like an 8-9 team. You can't
Yeah,
tell me that Detroit or Baltimore or Buffalo wouldn't have put up a better game, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been a better competition
Yeah.
in that particular scenario. I mean, come on, Buffalo would have given a bit better game than that for sure,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Feel bad for
So it'll
Buffalo.
be interesting. Kansas City's got some free agency problems, right? Like who are they going to
Yep.
pay? I mean, a lot of teams face that every year now, right? It's like who are you going to pay?
Right.
And that'll be interesting. Are they going to break it up? I think Kelsey might be done. He'll either retire or, I mean, if they watch the tape of that game, I would cut him. I mean, he
Yeah.
was terrible.
Yeah.
Just, he didn't have a catch in the first half, and then he had garbage time catches, and all of Mahomes' yards were garbage time yards.
Yeah.
The Eagles had their backups in at the end of the game. That's
Yeah.
how big of a win it was, right? Their backups were in.
Yeah.
And the kid from Iowa having the his first career interception, his first career touchdown, Cooper DeJean, that was phenomenal, right? I mean, what a moment. You pick off Mahomes in a Super Bowl and run it back for a touchdown. He said on social media that he watched that play like 100 times.
I bet.
It's like every time somebody posted it, he's like, "Yeah, I got to admit, I watched it over and over again." They're like, "Who wouldn't?" Guy was 22 years old for crying
Yeah.
out loud. That's amazing, right?
Yeah. That was fun.
That's that's got to be exciting. I always think about what have I done with my life? This kid's 22 and he's intercepting Patrick Mahomes and returning for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
last year was Brock Purdy, who's like 23 and going to overtime in the Super Bowl as the last pick of the NFL draft. I mean, these are awesome stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Next year, hit the reset button and
Yeah.
what Minnesota does if they're gonna franchise tag the QB or let him go, Darnold.
I think they'll offer Darnold a contract, but he'll probably go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Uh, and they'll bring in your guy JJ McCarthy from Michigan
Give him a chance.
and give him a chance and see what he
Yeah.
does. And the thing with that is, it's like how many rookie quarterbacks are successful? Jaden Daniels is and Brock Purdy are exceptions to the
Yeah.
rule of rookie quarterbacks, right? Both were tremendous in their rookie seasons.
Yeah.
Um, and Jaden Daniels had an amazing rookie season. Now, can he stay healthy? Right? He's not a big guy. And now every team has got a full season's worth of tape on him. Right? So we'll see.
True. The big advantage Washington has is now they've got their franchise quarterback on a rookie contract deal.
Yeah, and a rookie contract, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Now they
You
can go
got to
out.
make hay while you can do that. Same with the Vikings and JJ McCarthy, right? It's like rookie contract for that guy. They're paying him, a sack of marbles every year. So it's like now's your window. You've got
Right.
Jefferson and it's like you got a window here. You got to see if you can take advantage of it, right? On the flip side, San Francisco now has to pay Brock Purdy, and he's probably going to get 50 million. He deserves it. He took a team to a Super Bowl. He went back to back NFC Championships game. They had a bad year last year because of all the injuries.
Yeah.
But you got to pay the guy. So now Ayuk's probably gone. I heard Debo Samuel was trade bait. You got to hope Christian McCaffrey is healthy. If I'm San Francisco and Scattaboo falls to me in the draft, I'm taking him because he's a Christian McCaffrey player, right? He's
Yeah.
that kind of a player. And he would make a great transition if McCaffrey can't go, right?
Hmm.
But he's got the same kind of game. He's tough as nails. He's got some speed. He's got some moves. He gives 100% effort on every play. That's
Yeah.
a guy you want on your team, right? Everybody dreams of a guy like that.
Yeah. But we'll see how the Bears do because they stole the Lions offensive coordinator and we'll see if
Yeah,
this
the
year.
Lions lost half their coaching staff. So that's always interesting, right? Let's see if any of those guys were really key.
Yeah.
Maybe they were, maybe they won't. You don't always know, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully
So
everybody back healthy and so yeah, hopefully these new coordinators will won't completely botch it. See.
yeah. So, all right, it is week 4 of the new administration, and Elon Musk and the Doge guys have been going nuts. And it, this is the most amazing. I mean, honestly, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my lifetime in terms of politics, in terms of exposing, I think, what a lot of us thought was the case, but it's worse than we had imagined.
Oh yeah.
The abuse and the waste and the fraud in the federal budget and the federal spending is just off the charts, and it's everywhere,
Yeah.
literally everywhere. Every single department is a scam. They went into Social Security, and I've got the chart right here. People receiving benefits. Uh, Now, we all know that the oldest person in the world is usually about 114, right? This is usually about the oldest person in the world at any given moment is around 114, maybe 115, but that's even a stretch. And there's one of them in the entire world of 8 billion people, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not, because the United States was paying out 3.6 million people in the age range of 110 to 119.
Wow.
3,600,000.
Wow.
In the age range from 120 to 129, they were paying out 3.4 million.
Hmm. Interesting.
130 to 139, 3.9 million.
Yeah.
140 to 149, 3.5 million. 150 to 159, 1.3 million. 160 to 169, 121,000. And then it goes down. One
Ah,
person, 360 to 369 years of age on the Social Security rolls receiving payment.
wow.
Oh, and by the way, in case we didn't mention on the last show, the Social Security numbers are not deduped. So up to 10,000 or more people had the same secure Social Security number,
Wow. Hmm.
which allows them to vote as US citizens in a lot of places, right? And they did, in fact. And so how many, hundreds of millions of dollars paid to illegitimate Social Security recipients is there,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just blown away by, because you watch both sides, and if we just throw both sides, you throw both sides out and you say, okay, you've got $20 million going to fund Sesame Street in Baghdad,
Yeah.
and meanwhile, you're paying this much out of your check for taxes every 2 weeks, and you're seeing these
Yep.
big chunks coming out, and you just see 20 billion. There was 20 billion that Biden set, an account right before he left for some other thing.
Yeah.
Regardless of what side you're on, there should be outrage
Yeah,
because
how can you and who could defend that? Like these
yeah,
people out there protesting, and let's not over exaggerate it. There's like 10 of them.
yeah,
And they're out protesting. And of course, the news is going to broadcast all of that. And I saw 60 Minutes put a couple people up that were supposedly US aid employees, and they were boo-hooing. Oh, this was, yeah, it turns out they weren't. They
yeah.
weren't really, right? I mean, 60 Minutes is a complete fraud. Yeah, and I looked at the list. 10 million for Mozambique voluntary medical male circumcision. 10 million.
It's
How many
crazy.
circumcisions could you perform for $10 million?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
guessing a lot, right?
yeah.
9.7 million UC Berkeley to develop a cohort of Cambodian youth with enterprise driven skills. It turns out, and those are just like random stuff. 32 million to the Prague Civil Society Center. Why are we funding every little project in every country in the world? 19 million for biodiversity conservation in Nepal. 1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. And these are all so vague that none of
It's
it goes for that cause. It's
right.
just a scam. It's
It's
fraud.
yeah, you're lining somebody's pockets and
Somebody's pockets, either in that country and they're kicking back here. We talked about that in the last podcast. It's a complete scam, right? 2.5 million for inclusive democracies in Southern Africa.
yeah,
14 million for social cohesion in Mali. It turns out, as we found out, like in the last couple of weeks, every country in the world is just sucking at the teat of the US taxpayer nonstop. And
Yeah,
essentially, all of them owe their existence to us and our
sure.
tax dollars. Literally.
To take it even a step further, I mean, drugs, the cost of drugs in our country for the same drug. So if there's prescription X that you need for your blood pressure, let's say it's $120 a month that you end up paying for it, or $100 a month. That same exact medicine in all these other countries it's peanuts. It's pennies on the dollar. And the way that they justify it is they just say, well, we get what we can out of the other countries, but you end up paying, for the rest of the world to be able to have, this the research and this medicine. That to me is so unfair that I'm glad to see. But then, the left, and this is what I was going to mention, the left, their outrage that Elon Musk is going through, and it's like a privacy issue, where
Yeah, right.
he's got access and he doesn't have permission for people's access, but he's got access to all these documents and they're making that the outrage instead of,
Yeah. Which is crazy because would you rather have some low-level bureaucrat who's working from home have access to your data or the richest man in the world who has no need of your money? What do they think he's going to do with it? Oh,
yeah,
Brady, he's going to take your social security number and he's going to apply for a credit card with that, right? It's like, what the heck? How stupid are
yeah,
you, right?
so
And
ridiculous.
he even said, I saw it was an X post today or yesterday. He said, "Look, if I wanted to steal people's information, I owned PayPal. I
Yeah,
could have. I had all your information when I worked for PayPal. What did I do with it? I didn't do anything with it.
yeah, it's the
It's
old
just
smoke and mirror.
stupidity.
Don't
Oh
look
my
around.
gosh,
Let's
villainize people." And of course, he said too. He's like, everybody loved me when I was a Democrat, right? And then he just said it today. I saw an interview with him. He said, as soon as he was at a party and it was a perfectly wonderful party and he was there and he brought up Trump and he's like, it was like somebody got shot with a dart of epinephrine and rabies. That's
yeah,
what he said. They just went crazy. I just the mention of it. And he's like, I don't understand. Why can't we just have a logical conversation?
yeah,
Why can't we? Why can't we show that there's fraud, show that there's wasteful spending, show that this is unnecessary, show that, we're propping up every country in the world with our tax dollars and
yeah.
have a discussion about how that's probably not a good thing and the American taxpayers probably getting ripped off. And oh, by the way, think of all the other things that this money could be going for right here
Right,
in the
right.
US.
You're right. All the problems that were not addressed in the last 4 years or longer, and you're just, they're going after it like crazy, and they're starting to get the kickback now. Now you're starting
You're
to,
not, yeah, yeah, and the thing is, it's like there's no defense, and
yeah,
you're not winning that argument if you're supporting these ridiculous expenditures overseas. You're not winning that argument with the American people, not ever,
right,
right? Everybody's like, wait, what? And then I
yeah,
saw there was a post about a woman who worked in the federal government, and she's saying, yeah, people there brag that they can't get fired, right? And said her boss bragged to her. I've in my 20 years, I've only seen one federal employee get fired, and they're
hmm,
bragging about it. And they
yeah,
work from home, and they have a second job, and they 20% of the people do all the work. The other 80% are just lazy uh, people sitting around doing nothing. It's all a big scam,
yeah.
right?
That's
And it's just like, who could support that?
yeah,
And okay, 60 Minutes, roll out people. Oh, I got fired from my cushy government job that I didn't have to work at for 20 years. Pity me. I
yeah,
got news for you. The American people are saying boo hoo,
yeah,
right? It's time to grow up and welcome to the real world of working and not, being laid off and everything else. It's like, welcome to what all of the rest of us experience, right?
Yeah.
You're
It's
not winning any of those arguments.
and it's good to see because I think really the only way that they could advance the cause and get rid of the corruption and the waste is to blitzkrieg. I
Yeah.
hate to say that, use that term, but
Yeah.
that that's probably the only way. You can't walk on eggshells and try
No.
in and be rational with the other side and let them get some wins because they're basically not they're emotional thinkers. Everything is
Yeah, it's emotion based.
and they're not these policies. I think Americans are they see it as really valuable and it's going to take a lot more than just complaining about privacy issues as the main culprit
If you
behind.
think your information is private, you're a moron.
Yeah,
It's
right,
not, right? Do a search for your own self sometime and see how private you really are, right? You're not. And probably 99% of Americans are not. So I'd rather have somebody who's exposing fraud have access to the information. And you got to understand that there's 380 million people in the IRS rolls. They're
yeah,
not looking at individual people and pulling them
right.
out. Oh, here's Brady's tax record. Let me see what I can do with, that's not how it works,
No,
right? That's not what they're doing. They're finding mass fraud. And
right.
by the way, this is the amazing thing. And I don't know if you've ever done this in your work. I have done it in mine. Every line item for my budget at places that I've worked, and usually I have maybe 20 or 30 different budget items, right? They all have to on my Excel spreadsheet at the beginning of the year, they all have to roll up to a specific budget line that the organization has approved, right? They all have to go to that. So
Yeah,
if I have 30 items, six of them go here and five of them go to this one. And right, these are the goals of the organization and is established budget lines for those.
yeah,
And then every single thing, every expense or software or whatever that I procure for my department has to roll up to
right.
one of those line items. And I
Yeah,
have to explain to the treasurer what this is going for and account for that money. And then at the end of the year, either I am overspent or I'm underspent. And,
right.
there's a discussion about it.
Yeah,
Doge found out that $3.4 trillion dollars the Treasury has no budget line item for those items. None. It's blank. So in their database of payouts for checks, they have no idea where it's going. And there's
wow.
no way to trace where it went and how it ended up. And it didn't align with any budget item. It's just
Yeah,
an ad
hmm,
hoc thing,
yeah,
mysteriously got put in the butt. Where does 3.4 trillion? Now think what if you took 3.4 trillion and divvied that up for all the people who actually paid taxes over the last year, right? We'd
yeah,
all be in pretty good shape.
yeah. It'd
Let's
be a
just
nice
say.
for sure. Yeah. Well, my Gen X bladder is actually needing a break
Oh,
for.
okay. I'll give you a break. Let me press pause here and we'll be back in 1 second. Hang on here. I got to find my pause button. We'll be right back, folks.
Okay.
Hey, and we're back. Uh, this is what happens to Gen Xers, right? In
Yeah.
fact, it's funny, Brady. I started writing a book. I've written a couple books in my life, and the podcast has kind of inspired me. And having watched Stand By Me, we talked about it last week, but
Yeah.
I'm writing a book about some of my experiences just as a Gen Xer over the course of my life, just little snapshots
Yeah.
here and there. And I think it's just kind of fun, and I think it's one of those things that like these events in your life aren't necessarily earth-shattering or anything like that, but they're kind of a record of the times, right? Like this show is it becomes kind of a record of the times and what things are like and how, you know, uh, things unfolded in the world and all of that. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of interesting to juxtapose that to your life and whatnot. But
Yeah.
um, one more current event, I just saw that there was this plane crash in Toronto.
Mm,
Uh, and I just saw there was a new video today, and it looked like the plane did not know where the ground was because it just came in super hot,
mm,
landed really hard. No, it wasn't like flaring or anything. It wasn't coming in like this. It was coming in like this
mm.
and just hit the ground like it didn't know the ground was there. And then, of course, the wheels broke off and it flipped upside down. The amazing part, thankfully, no one was killed, which is unbelievable. And I
Yeah.
think actually the snow helped them soften the landing and everything that happened, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because it was very snowy, the runway had snow on it. There's an amazing video out there on X showing all this. You guys have to check it out. It's an amazing thing to see. And the guy who's videotaping it can't believe what he's. Holy crap! That plane just crashed right in front of me. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But I have posted multiple times. Every Gen X person watching that video is thinking Die Hard 2. This is
Right.
exactly what happened in Die Hard 2, right? It's like we're living in the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
It's like the plane, it looks like the plane didn't know where the ground was. And that's a major plot part in Die Hard 2. These guys take over the radar and navigation station from DC airport and they reset ground level to 100 feet high lower and the plane comes in hot and crashes and burns on the runway in the snow. It's
Yeah.
exactly what happened in Toronto. I mean, it's the exact same thing that happened in Toronto. It's
Yeah.
let's just hope we get the honest answer to that
Yeah.
story. Right? We still don't know what really happened in the Reagan National helicopter and airplane collision.
Right.
We still don't really know there. We do know that one of the pilots was a female who did not have a ton of experience in and was testing night vision goggle
Mm.
something or other. I mean, in front of an airport, really? Is that how
Yeah.
we do it?
Odd.
And then, they're like, well, maybe the altimeter was wrong or something. It's a big plane flying right at you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need an altimeter to know that you're
Yeah.
about to hit an airplane. And they said one of the preliminary things I heard was that the airplane pilot at the very last second saw that it was happening and tried to and pulled the stick up hard. So the black box has him like in the last second. I mean, he pulled the stick to try to get over the top of the helicopter. Um, but there was no reaction from the helicopter pilots in the Black Hawk. Ran straight into it without any awareness. It just, man, that's fishy as all heck, right? I mean, my spidey sense just goes crazy with stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. All these mistakes with airlines, airplanes are
It's,
quite
it
concerning.
feels, yeah, I mean, not, I mean, somebody asked RFK Jr. like what it's like to be a conspiracy theorist. Like that's a negative thing right now. And he's like, it depends on what you call conspiracy, because in about 30 minutes, all of them are proven to be true, right? It's like, it's like it doesn't take very long to
Yeah.
turn out that all of these are true. In fact, we had this last week the health official during COVID said that you won't get COVID and you won't transmit COVID if you have the vaccine. And there's emails. She knew that was a lie when she said it in 2020.
Mm. Mm.
She knew that that was a lie, and she still went out there and said it.
Wow.
And so it's no wonder that, again, that the administration is trying to clean house with all these bad apples and all these government organizations
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
feel like it's not their job to protect the American people. It's their job to create a narrative that makes sure that everybody gets paid.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can think otherwise at this point, right?
Yeah, I just think there's so many people that, they only listen to one news station and we know that they are all kind of politically motivated now. And yet we still have so many of those people out there that are only listening to MSNBC or CNN and they're just fed all, 24/7. It's
Yeah,
winding up
it's
into
just
a panic.
brainwashing and I watch have some other sources of news. This is
Yeah,
all I can say. Like, I'm not going to talk you out of your position, right? I'm not here to do that, but at least open yourself up to other sources of news,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Get an X account and scroll through there and look at some other sources of
yeah,
news, right? If CNN and The View is where and Instagram is where you get your news,
yeah.
I hate to tell you, you are sorely misinformed about almost everything,
Yeah.
right?
It's almost like a sports team. It doesn't matter how good they are, how bad they are, you're for them all the time. And you've got people
Yeah.
that are they're for their side, no matter how bad they
It
are.
doesn't matter. You think you're so invested. And I just saw uh it was a post that had all of the fallacies and the biases that people go into things with. And I just read down the list of them and I'm like, wow, that is very prevalent in society today. And one of the big ones is I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect or whatever. This is a big one in the workplace,
Hmm.
which is I think I'm really smart and so but I'm not. But because I think I'm smart, I believe that I know all there is to know. And so anybody who says anything aside from that, I don't listen to because I think I know everything there is to know about it. And
Hmm.
so my bias is because I'm such a genius and I'm so smart, I don't need to listen to alternative viewpoints because I already know everything, even though
Hmm.
I really know nothing, right?
Yeah.
Man, does that explain a lot of people right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's bad because you get rid of accountability because the
Yeah,
ones.
that's the thing. It's like just get back to some accountability, right? Now, all these people fighting against the Doge team and Elon Musk, why is it a bad thing to have accountability?
Yeah.
Where is the money going and how is it spent and what's the oversight on that and how are we accounting for it? How? How can you argue against that? How can you? You
I,
can't
I don't get it. I don't get it why people don't want more out of, you know,
because you're getting paid out of it and this is your piggy bank. That's why. There's no other reason. Sorry, there
yeah.
isn't.
Yeah.
You're on the take and this is your slush fund and you're mad about it being taken away. So you're going to have a hissy fit about it, right?
Yeah.
All right, I got three questions for you, Brady.
Okay.
Let me bring up my fancy graphic here. Wow, AI is amazing, right? It's just like you ask for anything, you can get. In fact, I was joking around after the U.S. hockey game, and as they're called now, the snow Mexicans, the Canadians. That's my favorite term for the now, snow Mexicans. I think that's pretty funny. Um, I asked an AI to create a picture of a bald eagle crushing a maple syrup bottle. And it did a great job. It made one for me and it was beautiful, right? It was just a bald eagle like crushing one. And after the hockey game, I saw a bunch of people had created ones a bald eagle like killing a Canadian goose. And it had it
Oh,
like in its claws, and just like pressing it into the ground. I thought it was pretty funny. So there's some good uses for AI.
right.
And we're not below that here on the Gen X Rewind. I use it for my graphics, right?
Yeah.
I got three questions for you, Brady. This is our
Okay.
segment on it's called the Rewind, and I asked Brady, and he asked me questions about our childhood, about being a Gen X kid,
Yeah.
and we don't know what each other's going to ask. So these are off the cuff responses. What let's see. What my first question is, what wait, this is last weeks. Let me switch here. All right. If you could repeat any age of your life, what would it be?
Oh, any age. Yeah, I'd probably stick with like 11 years old because I was still
Fourth
100%.
and fifth grade, right? 11-year-olds are like
Yeah,
fifth graders.
yeah. Still, it was before girls come in the picture. You have we had complete freedom. So,
Yep.
that's a little different. You didn't have the helicopter parents
Nope.
inside all day. And
Your parents were not ours, but it's generally depicted parents of Gen X kids when they were like 10. They were drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette, at the table, and the kid, comes in, I'm going to see my friends. Whatever.
yeah, right.
That's the Gen X parent, right? Like that's how it was. Now, my parents didn't drink and smoke, but they had about the same attitude, got to be
Yeah,
honest, right? Like it's like, okay,
yeah.
whatever.
Or, if you're still inside, it's, hey, aren't you going to go outside and,
Yeah.
play? Like, move along.
Like
Yeah,
my dad, I think I'd said before in another podcast, I said, my dad would tell me to go play on the yellow line, which is, in the middle of the street. Why don't you go play on the yellow line? That
yeah,
was his grand advice, which is funny because, actually, when I was a really young kid, they hadn't switched over in certain parts of the country to the yellow line. It was still white lines for
yeah,
both the middle line and the side on a road. They were still white when I was a really young kid.
yeah,
And at some point in time, they decided, well, let's make the divider line yellow, right? So it stands out or
yeah,
whatever. It's
yeah,
like, you remember there was this time when they made fire trucks like lime green? Do you
yeah,
remember that? Like, because they said red at night is black. So it's terrible. So
yeah,
then every fire department in the country, followed suit and had to get brand new fire trucks that were like lime green,
yeah.
right? Do you see lime green fire trucks anymore?
No, I
No,
don't.
no, you don't.
No.
So something tells me that was probably a government scam,
Yeah,
right?
20 billion to paint
$20
the,
billion later of green fire trucks.
yeah,
Right. So,
oh,
yeah, I agree with you. I think age 10 was perfect. In fact,
yeah,
that's really kind of the premise of the book that I was writing is like that the ultimate answer or the thing that to come out of it is going to be, yeah, being 10 is about the best thing ever for a boy, right?
yeah,
Especially a Gen X kid. Now, maybe it's different now, but for Gen X kid being 10, it just didn't get any better than that for
yeah,
all the reasons you stated. I mean, perfectly said. You didn't care about stuff and how you looked, and
yeah,
it didn't
yeah,
matter. You were just out to have fun.
yeah, yeah. And everything was free and everything was
Yeah,
taken,
you were free and
no bills, no responsibility.
nothing. Yeah, no girls, no stress, no nothing, right?
Easy, really could get everything done, didn't have homework. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Nah, no homework. There was no homework. Your parents had zero expectations of you because you're an idiot 10-year-old,
Yeah,
right?
even your
Uh,
safety was kind of,
yeah. And the thing is, you could tease your friends. Nobody cared. Didn't matter,
yeah,
right? Nobody was sensitive. Uh, you could joke around. You could say whatever you want. Your friends didn't care. It was pretty awesome, right? All
yeah.
right, number two. Who was your favorite teacher when you were a kid, and why? Why were they your favorite teacher?
Well, for me, the first one that comes to mind, there was Mr. Hayden was his name. I'm sure he's passed away now, but he was actually he was he taught sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. So when I was in middle school, and I remember some of his antics. He was how to describe him? He kind of reminds you of the teacher in Fast Times, Ridgemont High. Uh, Mr. What's his name?
Mr. Hand.
Mr. Hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
he looked a little bit like him, and he had a goalie stick with the bottom cut off, and that was the paddle, and so
Oh,
it
nice.
would hang on the wall, and that was kind of a threat, like you would get spanked with that goalie stick if you screwed up.
Isn't
But
that awesome?
he uh, he was really a hard-nosed teacher, but when you were on his good side and you did well, he took an interest in you
Yeah.
and you worked hard to get his favor. And you did well. I did really well in school, and I was very polite. And he recognized that and he was the one who blew the whistle on those kids that were chasing me home. Uh,
Ah, nice.
he was the one that said, "All right," and took me around and pointed him out. But he just did fun things too. He took a pumpkin and he put it in like a fishbowl and sealed it after Halloween. And it was on his desk, and we were just going to see what happens after so many
Right.
months of a pumpkin sitting there. And I mean, it got to where it was hysterical with stuff growing on it,
Mold and stuff. Yeah.
liquid and all that. But just really fun things like that. And but also really good at that time in my life, having somebody that was a mentor and didn't put up with anything. It was still back in
Yeah.
the and, he would pick kids up by the nape of the neck
Yeah.
and take the office. He did that a couple times with kids, and yeah, so it was good for me to have a teacher like that to kind of keep me on the right path.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I had Mr. Bloom, I think was my one of my favorites. He was my seventh or eighth grade history teacher, and he had actually been to Russia. I think he had been in Vietnam, like he
Oh.
had fought in Vietnam, and then he had been to Russia
Mm.
and think about it, what time this is,
Yeah.
right? This was in the late 70s, so it was still Cold War, right? And so he had great stories, but he didn't put up with any nonsense in his class. And I don't know if I told the story on here before, but me and another kid were talking or something during class. The bell rang. He said, "Hey, Evan, John, come up here for a second before you leave." At the end of the class after the bell rang. We're like, okay. So he came up there and he's like, you guys have always been good in my class. So I know I'm not going to have any more problems with you guys talking in class. All right, we'll see you. And it was like, all right, this is now what, 40 some years later, and I'm still telling this story. That's how impactful that was,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Like this was exactly the way you handle that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You point out the bad behavior, but not in a belittling way. And he didn't embarrass us in front of everybody else in class. He waited until after class,
Yeah.
and then he set the bar of expectations, right? I expect better of you.
Right.
And he was right. He never had another problem with us talking in class or being disruptive, right?
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was a
Yeah.
great model of how to handle a situation like that.
Yeah.
And he was serious, but caring. And I had an opportunity probably 5 or 6 years ago to contact him on Facebook or something and just let him know that his students really appreciated the way he handled stuff like that. And the guy, now he's like maybe 70 or something. Probably, well, maybe older than that,
Uh,
75 now. But he said, thanks. He really appreciated that and whatever. And just, really interesting. You have teachers like that. The other teacher that I had was in high school, and his name was Mr. Pitts. So you can imagine he had nicknames, right?
yeah.
With that name. I remember there was a funny episode of The Simpsons, and like Bart got kicked out of school, and then the principal Skinner said now he can bring back Mr. Glasscock because with Bart not being there to make fun of his name anymore, he could actually come back to teach. But and Mr. Pitts was he was a liberal teacher, and but he allowed me to spar with him on that.
Hmm.
right? So he knew that I was fairly conservative and things like that. And this was 1984, and he asked me like, "Well, who are you going to vote for?" Because that was the first election I could vote in, and I told him Jesse Jackson, and like his brain malfunctioned, right? Because he didn't know if I was serious or if I was yanking his chain, so he couldn't say anything because he didn't know what is
Right.
he going to say,
And
right? Like,
maybe your parents are like gun ho for that, and
yeah. So I totally flabbergasted him with that, and of course I was just teasing, but there was nothing he could do about it, right? So I thought it was pretty funny, but he told me at the end of the school year, he said, I was one of these kids, like I dressed up a lot to go in high school. I wore like a Oxford shirt and a knit tie and a sport coat like 1 or 2 days a week. And when I started, my other classmate guys would tease me, oh, who died? You know, right? Like you'd show up to school dressed up like that. Well, who died? And of course, it's the 80s. So the perfect response is your mom.
yeah,
You know,
right.
it's like, yeah, well, your mom died. Um, I didn't take it seriously. Nobody was offended, right? And it
Yeah,
was no big deal. So he pulled me aside towards the end of the year and he said, "I've never seen anybody have this kind of an impact on his class before." And I didn't know where he was going with that. I was like, "Oh no," right? It's like I'm kind of sarcastic. And I sort of say out loud jokes in class, right? My son does the same thing. He's been called out a couple times for it, right? Like I can't resist a good joke,
yeah,
right? Uh, uh, so I thought that's maybe where he was going, right? And he said, no, he's like, you dressed up for school, and now any given day, uh, in high school, there's 10 or 15 guys wearing sport jackets and ties in high school, right?
yeah,
He's like, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anybody have that kind of an impact.
yeah,
And it's like, well, I hate to like, diss myself, but I wasn't doing it to have an impact on other people. That was just a sidelight.
yeah,
Uh, I just like it, and girls paid attention to me because I did it,
yeah,
right? And all the other guys in my senior class recognized the girls paid attention to you when you dressed up. They liked it,
yeah,
right? So they're like, "Oh, gee, I guess I might as well do it."
yeah.
So he was my favorite. All right, last one. Did you ever have a serious injury when you were a kid?
Oh man,
Broken bone or anything like that?
not a ser I mean, when I was so my parents had me in every sport that you could possibly think of, trying to see if there's one that I'm just going to master and
They were thinking gravy
next,
train, gravy train. How
yeah,
are we gonna?
right, the next prodigy.
Yeah,
I was in judo, believe it or not.
judo, awesome.
I was taking judo, and I was actually, not to toot my own horn, but I was really, really good in that. In fact, I was I was built like Pee Wee Herman, so as a kid, very, very scrawny. But they kept moving me up in weight, and I remember towards the end, you have these bouts where you basically fight each other, and there's points, and you have a winner. So I was, for the first time in this much heavier weight class, and you start off back to back, and they say, I don't remember what they say, but then you get up and you grab onto each other, and then you start. Well, we got up, and we grabbed onto each other, and he went to his knee, and my foot was under his knee, and instantly broke.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that was it, and I was walking
Thus
with
ended your
that,
potential Olympic run for
the,
judo champion of the world.
Fury, the gold medals, and all that out the window. But that was the only thing I had. And the funny thing was, I remember we went to the emergency room, and my dad and I are sitting there. In an emergency room, you can sit for hours and hours, as people
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And we're sitting there. We're sitting there. My dad just, this is the perfect Gen X. dad thing to say. Let's just go. Hey, look, if it's broken, we'll just put some tape on it and it'll heal. They're not going to do anything anyways. Let's just go and leave. And so that was that. But that's a good Gen X win.
That's perfect.
Yeah, rub some
Yeah.
in it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Man up and, you know. But yeah, how about you? Do you have anything?
Yeah. Nothing. I never have broken a bone. So to this day, I still haven't broken a bone. I'm knocking on wood, right? I feel like if I fall down now, I'm gonna break my hip or something. It's like, but I I did when I was 3 or 4, I was sitting on a couch backwards with my sister, and I fell back and hit the back of my head on an end table,
Ooh,
and it had kind of a sharp edge. And so it opened up a pretty big gash and I was bleeding. And my mom's like, well, same thing, right? It's like, well, let's just run it under in the tub. Let's just run it underwater, right? The
yeah.
entire tub filled with blood. I mean, it was like a stuck pig. It was just a bathtub filled with blood.
Uh,
It was like a horse seed, right? So my mom, she's like, we probably should take you to the emergency room. So she did, and I got 3 stitches. The only time I've ever had stitches,
yeah.
3 stitches in the back of my head. And they literally had to call in 2 large orderlies to hold me down because I was screaming so much from getting these stitches in the back of my head.
Oh man.
And I still have a scar, like to this day, there's still a scar back there. It's covered with hair for now.
Yeah.
But I still have a scar back there from that. That's the most major thing I think that I've ever had
Yeah.
happen. Like I said, I've had a few other cuts and bumps and bruises and, fell off my bike and knocked the wind out of myself. And I
Oh,
probably had a couple of concussions along falling off my bike. You just didn't know anything about it, right,
yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty much it.
And I think
I'm pretty lucky.
the concern you probably heard this too is don't bleed on the couch, you know.
Yeah,
Hurry.
yeah. It was like, let's not get that on the carpet. It's hard to get out,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I just remember it's like, wow, that's a lot of blood. I mean, it was when you get cut in the head, you
Oh yeah.
bleed like crazy, right?
Oh
And it was a lot of blood. And it was even a little shocking for me as a kid,
yeah.
like a bathtub full of blood, right? And you're just like, and it hurt, but yeah, that was something. All right, what do you got for me?
Well, just one big one really, and it was
Okay.
one thing I was thinking about earlier was with as good a childhood as we had, where you had the freedom and you know the slower pace of life and all the fun things with your friends. With where we are now, if you could swap out for your child that same experience, but you also have to swap out all the technology and conveniences and things of today, would you make that move?
Yeah, 100%, right? Like if I could take my son and put him back into my world at his age, I would in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
Um, because I just think that individualism that was built by Gen X people because of their environment
yeah,
um, is just something that will never be recovered, right? We were the last generation to kind of be pre-tech when we were kids and then grow into technology, right?
yeah,
And uh, so we're the last generation to have that experience of no tech or minimal tech, right? I was writing this in my book, a black and white TV set, right? Like was my first TV set that my family had when I was a kid, and we had Pong, right? That was a video game and stuff. So you started to get into it in my life, but we spent most of our time outside
yeah,
on our bikes and playing. And I think that experience creates a more individualistic worldview,
Yeah.
toughens you, not in a bad way, just in a I can take bumps and bruises and I can listen to people insult me and be friends with them and,
Yeah.
live to fight another day. And so many people in the world today can't take 1 ounce of criticism,
Yeah.
right? And like Elon Musk said, they just turn into rabid psychotics the minute you say something that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
When did that happen? When could you not have a conversation with people about stuff, right? It's pretty uh amazing. I think my son is pretty well adjusted, all things considered.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe because he's heard me talk about some of these things ad nauseum over the years, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would if we could go back and you'd lose all of that and drop them into that same space that I came through, yeah, that would be 100% more preferable. And the
Yeah.
world was a better place as well, just in terms of I don't know, morality and everything else. It seems like it wasn't perfect, right? And it
Yeah.
never has been, but you just weren't exposed to it the way you are now and didn't have access to it. Like we said last time, I mean, my access to bad stuff was a squiggly HBO screen that was scrambled on the TV, right? That was it. That was the
Yeah.
only access, right?
Yeah.
And now it's in your hand 24/7, right? That's a sad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing is the phone, seeing how it affects kids and young adults, not just social media, but there's so many, you've just added so many addictions and things that can affect that thinking back to the simpler times is it's refreshing when you don't have that to fight with and those addictions there.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. Hey, I want to share one thing here. I'm going to see if I can make this work here. I'm sharing my screen and hopefully everybody can see it. This says back in 1985, the average cost of a new house was $89,000. That's like the price of a BMW today, right? You can have a house for that. But the median price was
yeah. Wow.
75,000.
Yeah.
That's like 1 year of college. Now it's like, it's
Mm.
crazy. Average income was 22,000. Average monthly rent was $375. I
Wow.
remember the first apartment that I ever rented was 320 a month. 320. Isn't that
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. That's good.
Um, Average price for a new car was $9,000. In fact, I was thinking about it though, in the late 70s and early 80s, watching Price is Right, right? Like when you're sick and you're home, when Gen X kids were sick and home from school, you had saltine crackers, ginger ale, and uh, Campbell's chicken noodle soup, and you would watch The Price is Right. Like this
Uh,
is everybody.
That's
Literally
just,
everyone in the world did that exact
yeah.
same thing.
Yep. Yep. And it's still to
And
this, whenever I see Price is Right, it takes you back to, well, it's daytime. Yeah, I must be sick or,
I must have a cold and I'm staying home from school, right? It's like, where's my
yeah,
chicken noodle soup, right? And saltine
here.
crackers. Yeah, it's hilarious how that's such a common experience for Gen X kids. But so watching Bob Barker, Price is Right, and they would give away a car, like usually one per show. And then you
Yeah.
had to guess the price of the car, and the number almost always started with a three or a four. This is a
Hmm.
$3,000 car or a $4,000 car.
Wow.
Um, so I was actually surprised to see that it was 9,000 was the average in 85. That seems even high,
Seems
right?
pretty
Like
high. Yeah.
so that would have been a pretty nice car, I think, in 1985.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gallon of gas was $1.09. And that's actually high too, because I remember 1986 in Iowa, there was a time I was paying 64 cents a gallon in 1985. 64 cents a gallon. Isn't that something? Movie ticket
Yeah,
was 275,
I
postage
remember it
stamps.
makes sense in Michigan.
There was bacon was a dollar. I don't even know how much bacon costs now. I'm embarrassed. A beanbag chair was 39 bucks. Rainbow Bright Color Kids, $9. Ribeye steak was 3.89. I remember going on vacation with my family and I'd order the shrimp and it was 4.95, and my mom thought that was ridiculous. You know, the chicken was 3.95, but I had to have the shrimp. That was 4.95. That's ridiculous for a 10-year-old to order a nearly a $5 meal.
Yeah, right.
That's how it was, right? It's
Yeah.
amazing. But you look at things like that and you think, wow, how far things have come, right? Just how things have changed. And sure,
Oh
we
yeah.
make more money and everything, but if you were making 22,000 and your car costs nine,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
that's a lot.
and if we sit down with a baby boomer or a World War II generation, and they go over how much the average cost was when they were young adults, a loaf of bread is 5 cents. You
Yeah.
know,
You go, the burger was 10 cents and a Coke was 5 cents. That's what my dad used to tell me, right? He's like, if you went
yeah,
to a burger place, and they didn't even really have fast food when they were kids, it didn't even exist yet, right?
yeah,
But you'd go to the local place that had burgers, and a burger was like 15 cents, and a Coke was five, and the fries were 10,
yeah,
so you go and you'd spend 50 cents for lunch.
yeah.
But at the time, your dad made $6,000 a year,
Right. I'm
right?
sure it's
500 bucks a month.
yeah, yeah,
That's amazing, right? When you think about it. Hey,
yeah.
our producer is telling us we need to wrap things up.
Okay. All right.
As you know how that goes. So the street lights are coming on out there. And it's funny because they actually are coming on right now as we speak, right? It's like it's about that exact time.
Yeah.
I see scenes like that, Brady, and man, it just warms my heart, right? Look at the clean street,
Oh yeah.
suburb with the nice houses and the big trees and the street lights coming on, and your
Yeah.
mom stands on the front porch and yells your name, so
Yeah.
everyone in the neighborhood, hey, your mom's calling you, right? I heard
Yeah.
your mom yelling for you. And you
Yeah.
get on your Huffy bike and ride home. That's
Yeah.
how it was. But I want to remind everybody to hit subscribe and like. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can check us out on Spotify. We're on X, we're on Instagram. In fact, one of our clips on Instagram got quite a few views. I sometimes share just kind of our little funny outtakes from the show, and those get people seem to like those. Where you can listen to us on Amazon Music or iHeartRadio, and we just added UHF Channel 75 in Beaufort, South Carolina. Just picked us up
Oh,
this last week, so.
good
It's one
deal.
of, it's supposedly one of the most beautiful, picturesque, relaxing cities in the country, Beaufort, South Carolina. UHF channel 75 down there.
Yeah.
Uh, so for Brady and myself, we thank you for tuning in, and we want you to have fun out there, but we also want you to be home before the streetlights come on, right, Brady?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
All right. Congratulations again, Brady, on winning the Super Bowl pick. You did a great
Yeah.
job. You proved that I'm a moron. I
No,
happily accept that because I was happy to see the outcome.
real
I'm sure
quick,
we'll have,
who's your pick for the hockey game on Thursday?
oh boy.
What's the score?
Uh, Score is going to be 4-2 US.
Okay.
4-2 US. I think it'll be interesting to see if we start fights again. I think it's like you said, it's Boston. We better start fights, right? They're going to be expecting it. Right? The only
Yeah.
better place maybe to have had the game would have been in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
Because then
Oh,
the fans would have also started
right.
fights, right?
Right.
And throwing octopuses on the
Right.
ice.
Nobody's safe.
Nobody's safe, right? So it's like, All
Uh,
right. Yeah, we're pulling for the US on Thursday. Thank you all for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. From all of us here at the Gen X Rewind, have a safe week, everybody.
all right.
We'll see you. Bye bye.